Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, August the 7th, 2025. Today it is halfway between the solstice and the equinox. The solstice was a time when the sun was at 0 degrees Cancer. Equinox, sun is at 0 degrees Libra. Halfway between 0 degrees Cancer and 0 degrees Libra is 15 degrees Leo. And today the sun is at 15 degrees Leo. And this is a point of power. And it's made extra powerful by the fact that right now Mars is at 0 degrees Libra. So Mars and this solstice equinox halfway point are really coming together. So yeah, it is a point of power, and this is something I need to discuss in this video. But first of all, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for the day, which is Thursday, August the 7th, and here is the chart for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So looking at this chart, the moon is still in Capricorn, 24 degrees Capricorn at noon, sort of New York time. And the moon does go into Aquarius tomorrow at 2:18 a.m. London time. So that means that if you're in the Americas this evening, the moon will change sign, and so there could be a slight sort of change of emphasis there. But moon moving from Capricorn to Aquarius, both Capricorn and Aquarius are Saturn ruled signs, so it's not necessarily the case that you're going to feel a huge change when that happens. But aside from that, the moon moving through late degrees Capricorn, it doesn't do a great deal. I mean, it's effectively void. Now in that chart, I haven't included Chiron. If you want me to throw in Chiron, which I probably should do. So if we put Chiron in that chart, we might see an aspect. So there's Chiron at 27 degrees Aries. So the moon is applying to a square of Chiron, and you might say that that's the only major aspect the moon is making. And so moon square Chiron, we're trying to be different. Perhaps some of us are also trying to be compassionate, but it's a bit of an effort. Moon in Capricorn, we're trying to do things done by the book. We also have one eye on our own interests, yet something is bothering us. We can't be entirely selfish. Maybe someone is suffering, someone is in pain, something needs to be said, and that might disturb our peace or it might disturb our plans. But really, that moon square Chiron is probably quite a sort of a minor influence. And so, with the moon being void, of course, making the last major aspect to a traditional planet before leaving the sign, for many of us, it might not be an especially exciting day. Now, I'm looking at it from an individual perspective. We all have our individual lives, and there isn't necessarily much drama, but that doesn't mean to say it's not a dramatic day in a collective sense. We've got Mars moving into Libra. Mars moved into Libra yesterday evening if you're in, or even yesterday afternoon if you're in the Americas. But if you're in London, for example, Mars would move into Libra at sort of 23, really early today, at 23 minutes past midnight. An hour later, if you're in sort of Western Europe, continental Western Europe, or most of continental Western Europe. And the thing is about Mars moving into Libra, it does happen. It's not exactly an unusual event, but at the same time as that's going on, we've got the Sun moving on to 15 degrees Leo. Here it is. There's the sun at 15 degrees Leo, and so I think that's that's quite important. In fact, the precise time that the sun is on 15 degrees Leo is at 6:51 this morning, London time. So, why does that matter? Why do I care that the sun is at 15 degrees Leo? Indeed, why should you care about the sun being at 15 degrees Leo? Well, when the sun is at 15 degrees Leo, it is sesquiquadrate the Aries point. And at the same time, we know that Mars is on the Aries point. Mars is at Libra. Mars is opposition the Aries point. So that means that we have Sun semisquare Mars on the Aries point. Now, that is a major aspect. It's you could say one of the most important aspects of a week. And when you're thinking about Sun and Mars, these two masculine planets, both fairly fiery. They want to be noticed. They want action. They want to do stuff. They're at odds with one another because they're semisquare. So that does, as far as I can see, create a lot of tension. And not necessarily just for today. It's also about the rest of the week. Don't forget, Mars has just gone into Libra, so Mars is applying to an opposition of Saturn. And also we've got the build up to the full moon, so we mustn't forget about that. And so things are changing, and there is quite a lot of stress with this sun semisquare Mars, and this is something I do need to look at at the end of the video. So you could say that the action this week is quite concentrated. There aren't that many aspects. The moon doesn't make any aspects of consequence, but Mars in Libra, Sun semisquare Mars, that could explode. It could be explosive, and we know that tension levels are increasing. Tariffs, Trump trying to get Russia to agree to a ceasefire, which I'm not quite sure why he would bother on doing that. It seems to me to be a waste of time. And then what happens then? What's India going to do? There's pressure on India. I mean, things are moving quickly because India, Trump is threatening secondary sanctions against countries that are importing Russian oil. So it's all very complicated at the moment. And it's only Thursday, and the week is probably going to get sort of more difficult as it progresses. And we mustn't forget about that full moon coming up. And so that's the view in New York. If we look at things from the perspective of Sydney as a representative of Australia and New Zealand, it's kind of a similar picture. Moon is still in Capricorn. Okay, the moon is making an opposition to Jupiter. That opposition to Jupiter could be about excessive behavior. I mean, the moon is potentially applying to something. So, if, particularly early in the day, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, there may be some action, but it may be action that probably should be avoided. It's just overreacting to what another person is doing, or overreacting to a situation that is probably best sort of left alone. And then we have the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and the aspect that gets my attention is the semisquare between the Earth and Neptune. There is Earth at 15 degrees 24 Aquarius, and there's Neptune at 0 degrees 28 Aries. So you've got an Earth-Neptune semisquare. So it's difficult to understand what's happening, isn't it? There are a lot of opportunities here for just misunderstanding the situation, focusing on the wrong things. And it's more about politicians and government. It's not necessarily about us down here, ordinary human beings. It's when you've got governments trying to create policy, trying to interact with one another, and you've got Earth semisquare and Neptune. That's not good. People don't always know what they're doing. So I would not have regarded that Earth semisquare Neptune as being a positive. On the other hand, it's not an unusual aspect. It happens fairly regularly. And, we have to see that Earth's semi-square Neptune, in the context of the wider astrological picture. And so, if you have got, for example, Sun semi-square Mars, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know what's going on, especially if you're a government and you've got armed forces at your disposal and you're trying to play diplomatic games, and you need to know what's happening. But Earth semi-square Neptune definitely isn't going to help. And so it's now time to look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, August the 7th, 2025. Aries, there are things going on, and it's relevant to you. Now, in a general sense, the moon is moving through Capricorn, and it might not seem as if that is, especially dramatic. I mean, the moon in Capricorn does allow you to, think about what's important to you, and you have ambitions, and you're quite possibly being meticulous about it. You kind of know that you've got to do things properly. You've got to go through logical sequences. You can't be too impulsive. You can't be a complete Aries, can you? I mean, you've got to get through the day, and you don't want to cause too much upset. And why should you cause upset? I mean, the moon is making a square to Chiron, and that probably should be noted. So moon square Chiron. Chiron obviously still moving through Aries, and this is a slow-moving minor planet, and Chiron moving through Aries perhaps focuses on what makes you special, what makes you an individual, and how you express your individuality. And then, moon in Capricorn is saying, well, you've got to be careful here. You don't want to make too much of a fuss. And there is that tension there. But I think that with moon square Chiron, as it's hitting angular houses, I think you have a chance to bring to bear your individuality and your particular view of the world. And you can do it in a way that is relatively dynamic, that does get enough attention but doesn't cause an excessive amount of damage. So don't worry about your individuality. There is a way of being yourself and telling everyone what is on your mind, and so that's okay. But there are other things going on. Mars is moving into Libra. I mean, if you're in the Americas, Mars moved into Libra yesterday. And so for you, that is a big event. And so, one way of looking at Mars in Libra is saying, well, Mars is your ruler. Mars is opposition the Aries point. So there is something about you which does want to reach out to the world. It's not just about you and your own private interests. That's perhaps how you'd like it to be. That's a comfortable way of doing things. But you have got a message, and perhaps I think I sort of mentioned this yesterday. Do think about how you can communicate with a wider audience. Ideally, it will be the whole world, but not all of us, not every Aries is in a position to tell everyone what's on their mind. Not every Aries is able to get their message to go, all around the planet and to have sort of millions and millions of people listening to you. But you have to think about what you can do, because you have a perspective. We saw that with Moon Square Chiron. You have quite a unique perspective, and that is a unique perspective that you need to share. Now, Mars moving into Libra can be seen in a more sort of long-term way, because Mars is a planet that normally takes about 6 weeks to get through a sign. I mean, it depends, and so So Mars stays in Libra and until when does it? Okay, Mars goes into Scorpio on September the 22nd. So yeah, for the next 6 weeks, Mars is moving through your opposite sign, and so Mars moving through your opposite sign could be about other people, and a lot of your energy, like it or not, may be focusing on, what might it be focusing on? Sorry about that interruption. That might be focusing on partners, relationships, the fact that you are not always in control, that you've got to consider another person's needs, another person's priorities, and this can be annoying, and that's something that you have to prepare yourself for. And it's not such a long time. It's just 6 weeks. But if you want to be effective, then you can't do everything on your own all the time. There are times when you have to take into account outside opinions, take into account other people's sensitivities, and maybe you have to put some of your ideas and plans on hold while you are considering other opinions. And the Sun today is making a semi-square to Mars, and that aspect is a big deal. As I said in the introduction here, this Sun semi-square Mars, the Sun is halfway between the solstice and the equinox. I mean, it is a real point of power. So you might say with Sun semi-square Mars, Aries, but you can be very definite. You know who you are, and you know what you can put up with, you know what you can tolerate. And that might lead to some kind of disagreement. You can't agree with everyone. Right? You can't be everyone's friend, and so you are thinking about what's important to you, and it is an angry aspect. And although the moon is void of course, the moon doesn't seem to be going anywhere. With that Sun semi-square Mars, there just could be something over the day which you find really quite annoying. And the question is, what do you find annoying? Well, one thing you might find annoying is inactivity or complacency, or the world not moving as fast as you are. At least that's how it might feel. And so you could be frustrated to the point where you feel you might have to do something, but you don't have to do anything. I think that today you do have to think about your priorities, getting through the day, and you can get through the day. And so you perhaps have to distinguish between your own anger and frustrations, and also what needs to be done. And your first priority is just making sure you accomplish everything. And I really do think you can do it. And at the same time, you can show your individuality, and in the end, you can demonstrate to other people, to the world at large, what is important to you. And in the end, they can take you seriously and perhaps meet you halfway. They might not give you everything they want, but they'll give you enough of what you want for you to be able to end the day on a reasonably satisfactory note. Taurus, you want things to happen. You want to be different, and that is absolutely okay. You don't have to be content with the status quo. And if you want to create change, you can. But it's not necessarily about having a revolution. You can create change in ways that could be quite subtle. Maybe you just do things differently, or you start to show an interest in something, and you show an interest, and at first no one else is showing an interest in it, but things change, things develop, and soon enough you realize that something is going on, and that you start to get some support. Now, whatever you're doing, Taurus, it's important that you do it properly, that you don't take shortcuts. There might be a temptation to take shortcuts. I mean, you want to be noticed. You want to do things your way, but if you're in a hurry, that's not going to work. And it could be a time, not just today, but over the next 6 weeks or so, where Taurans do need to make a special effort to make sure that they assert themselves correctly. There is a right way to assert yourself, and there's a wrong way, and you have to go through the steps. It's if you feel that you want instant action, that's not going to work. If you feel you want other people to just respond to you immediately, again, you're going to feel frustrated, you might feel angry, and that's not going to be very good for relationships. And it's not just you that want to do things properly, it's other people as well. So think about how to do things correctly, and understand that other people want things done correctly. And if you can manage that, then things should be okay. But still, Taurus, you want to be an individual. You want to stand out as an individual, and I don't think that you're especially in the mood for compromise. The sun is right in the middle of Leo now. It's at 15 degrees Leo, and Leo is the bottom of your chart, right at the bottom. It's Leo is arguably the most private sign in the Taurian horoscope, and the sun is making a semisquare to Mars, and because of that sun semisquare Mars, you won't take kindly necessarily to people disturbing you, getting in your way, trying to get you to do things that you just are not interested in doing. And so that does mean that Taurans can potentially be very, very stubborn. And so part of the essential nature of being a Taurus is at the moment being emphasized, and you have to think about how your stubbornness is going to impact other people, because the sun is making a semisquare to Mars. That sun semisquare Mars is arguably the most important aspect of the day. And so sun semisquare Mars can be about annoyance, tension, and just someone refusing to move. And who is refusing to move? Well, it could be you refusing to move, and your refusal to move doesn't make other people happy. So that does potentially create a real clash there. And so what do you do about it? Well, Taurus, it's important that you have a broader view. You don't just get caught up in the sort of the minutiae of the situation, and needing to be right in one particular area, or perhaps two particular areas. You want to be right here, and that's what matters. You need to get a sort of a broader picture and ask yourself, what is important. And if you can answer that question, then that might allow you to be an individual. And today you really can be an individual, but you can be an individual in a way that sort of complements a human experience. People do appreciate individuality, provided it's not obnoxious. If you're pushing your individuality out in a sort of an aggressive, obnoxious way, that's not going to be appreciated. But if you can just be yourself, be different, and let other people respond to you as they see fit, in that way, things should be okay, and I think that in the end you'll be able to negotiate the various challenges. Gemini, you can see that things are happening, and you should ideally pay a keen interest in what other people are doing. They have their own way of doing things, and sometimes other people can be quite sort of unique in their approach, and it's important that you appreciate that uniqueness, because Geminis sometimes can be so obsessed with themselves that they don't really listen, and they don't listen, and well, they're half listening, and they're being told something really important, or that someone is being very creative, and Gemini is somewhere else, and you could say that is being disrespectful. So there is a danger in Gemini. And remember, I'm a Gemini. I've got my sun in Gemini, so I'm not singling you out, being projecting anything. Well, okay, I might be projecting something. I mean, perhaps that's a problem. That's the problem of me having my sun in Gemini, trying to make sense of Gemini. But I think there is this danger for all Geminis today, that they don't fully appreciate another person's creativity and individuality. They may not just be dismissive, but they might not hear it all. So if you're being told something, listen very carefully, and don't just be hanging around waiting for them to stop talking so you can say whatever you want to say. That would not be a good idea, and of course it would not be respectful. But it's also important from a perspective of you, because you can benefit from another person telling you something important, telling you something that could give your creativity a real boost. So that is one aspect of what is going on today. And also, Gemini, you have a broadly serious approach, with the moon in Capricorn, and the moon in Capricorn is making a square to Chiron, and that again is a challenge to look out. Part of you wants to just concentrate on yourself and whatever you feel to be important, but there's pressure. There's something else going on. You can see it, or you can half see it. At first you don't see it, but if you make the effort to look, it's obvious. But there is something going on. It may be that someone needs your help. They're not asking for help, but you're in a position to provide that help. So that's certainly a possibility. Or it just might be something going on in the world that is disturbing, and it's distressing, and it bothers you, and it's upsetting your peace of mind. But this is a time, Gemini, when things are quite intense, and that's the way it is. I mean, that's the nature of the world in which all of us Geminis are living. And then we've got Mars moving into Libra, and I think that Mars moving into Libra is a good thing. Mars has been in Virgo for some time, and the problem about Mars in Virgo, Gemini, is that it might have at times rooted you to the spot. You you were being encouraged to sort of put your energy into something that you didn't necessarily want to, you didn't really want to, but you couldn't help it. And you were quite sort of inward looking, and it might have been also that things like home and family were taking up a lot of your time. You didn't want them to take up a lot of your time, but they just were. And so there could have been an overall feeling of dissatisfaction, that your energies were going in the wrong direction. Especially as the South Node is in Virgo. The Mars has been conjunct the South Node. And let me just change this chart, because I have not included the nodes in this chart, which is not good. Okay, there we are. Sorry about that. So you can see Mars has been conjunct the South Node, and that might have been encouraging you to sort of go in the wrong direction, to just be too inward looking. But anyway, Mars is now in Libra, and Libra is of course an air sign, and Mars is starting to make a grand trine. Mars is moving towards a trine of Uranus. It's moving towards a trine of Pluto, and of course, so all the air signs, Uranus in Gemini, Mars in Libra, Pluto in Aquarius. So I think that this grand trine for you, Gemini, is going to be very energizing, and you're starting to feel the energy now. Now that Mars is moving into Libra, it's beginning to happen, and you can, look at things in a new way, in a way that is more expansive, and you're now able to give yourself a chance to, do something special. And we're not talking about sort of vague creativity. I mean, I always have a problem with this word creativity. I use the word creativity far too much. I think people in general use the word creativity too much, because it can be very vague. What does it mean to be creative? And very often people claim to be creative, and they're just doing something that someone else is doing. They're just copying. It's like it's just filling in boxes. This is creative. It's not necessarily creative at all. But creativity ideally is a unique contribution, something that no one else is doing. And with Mars starting to make trines to Uranus and Pluto, you have access to the power of the universe. Uranus and Pluto, these outer planets, which are sometimes very difficult to comprehend, and you can bring it down to earth, and you can make it all real. And so, if you're going to be creative, and you can be creative, it's got to be special. It's perhaps got to have an element of risk, because if it's something routine, then that spoils the whole purpose of it. It can't be creative. It has to be a unique demonstration of who you are, but also who you are aligning, who you are as in terms of the times in which you're living. We all have to accept the times in which we're living, and right now you can be in accord with those times. And so there is very much a change of gear with Mars in Libra. You might not experience that change of gear today, because the moon is still in Capricorn, but tomorrow, when the moon moves into Aquarius, things will change. I think that does look pretty exciting. Now, if you're in the Americas, then the moon is actually going to go into Aquarius this evening, or even late afternoon if you're in Alaska or Hawaii. So when the moon moves into Aquarius, there might be a sudden change, and you might suddenly sort of become, a lot more inspired, and you might start to get an idea of what the universe wants you to do. Cancer. The moon continues moving through your opposite sign, Capricorn, and it doesn't do a lot in Capricorn. It doesn't really make any aspects. okay, it makes a square to Chiron, and so other people matter to an extent. You are available to other people. You're aware of their needs, but I don't think that you're necessarily going to be called on to spend sort of a huge amount of time worrying about what other people are thinking or doing or demanding. And quite possibly it can be a relatively quiet, uneventful day. Moon in Capricorn, you looking after your own interests, aware to an extent that other people do have to be considered, but the potential for pressure, external pressure, always there, but is that potential going to be actualized? Probably not. Though with the Moon square Chiron, it might be that something bothers you. That's perhaps what Chiron is about. You're minding your own business, you've got it all sorted out, and then just something happens, or you start to think about something. It's kind of optional. You don't have to think about it, but you just do. And it's a thought that won't go away. And sort of reluctantly, you might have to do something. Maybe you have to help someone, or there might be a request. Your expertise is needed. Someone wants it, and it's not something that you necessarily want to do, but you do feel a moral obligation there. And aside from that, we do have Mars moving into Libra, and I think that Mars moving into Libra is a big deal. Libra is a cardinal sign. Of course, Cancer is a cardinal sign, and so Mars moving into Libra says something about your changing priorities, and Mars, it stays in Libra until September the 18th or something. September the 21st. No, sorry, September the 22nd. Mars moves into Scorpio. So from now until September the 22nd, Libra is a sign which is connected with what is important to you. The roots of the matter, your security, and so with Mars moving through Libra, it could be that certain aspects of your sign are emphasized. When we think about Cancer as a sign, we think about a sign which is security orientated. You think of the symbol for Cancer, the crab with its shell, always trying to protect itself. And with Mars moving into Libra, that protectiveness is going to be intensified, and it could suddenly become very important, and it's going to be especially important just as Mars moves into Libra, because Mars will be on the Aries point, and it will also be making an opposition to Saturn. So Mars opposition Saturn, today and perhaps over the next couple of days, there are going to be certain things that you're going to be taking very seriously, and you're going to be aware that there are real threats out there. At least you regard them as being real threats. We're always threatened. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. There's always things that can go wrong, and Cancer, at the moment, you're going to be particularly aware of it, and this might be a time where you really do want to look after your own interests, and very soon, but the Mars opposition Saturn, it's not exact today, but it's exact very soon, and so that's something that's going to be weighing on your mind, and you'll be thinking about things that could go wrong. And today we've got the Sun making a semi-square to Mars, and that's quite a fiery aspect, and perhaps it's too fiery from your perspective. So Cancer, today might be a day when you kind of start sort of reviewing sort of security arrangements. I mean, I don't mean that literally, necessarily, like burglar alarms and closed circuit televisions or whatever people have nowadays. It's all much simpler with wireless internet. But you're going to want to be as safe as possible with Mars moving into Libra, and that might say something about the next 6 weeks between now and September the 22nd, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something that you can sort out, but in the process, don't allow yourself to get annoyed by your family. Family issues may matter with Mars moving into Libra, and particularly with Mars making an opposition to Saturn. There's maybe certain members of your family, or it just could be aspects of your domestic routine that it could be annoying, that could make you angry. And so Cancer, do try to keep your cool and ask yourself what is important. Some things are important, some things really are worth making a fuss about, but other things probably you can just let them pass. Leo, the big aspect today, Leo, is a semisquare between the Sun and Mars. And it's not just that the Sun is semisquare Mars. It's the fact that the Sun is right in the middle of the sign Leo. It's at 15 degrees Leo. And it's exactly 45 degrees from Mars. So if we want to interpret this aspect sort of literally, we might say that you might be angry. There could be things going on that really annoy you. And so, be careful how you go. If you're feeling angry, that anger might be manifested. You might have an argument, you might have a disagreement, or even if there's no one around, your anger could be transferred into something else. For example, if you're operating a heavy machinery and you're not in a great mood, or you're just driving, do think about that. It is quite a fiery aspect, and you want to be in control. You can be in control. I mean, it's not that you're in a weak position with the Sun right in the middle of Leo. I mean, in fact, you could say you're in a very strong position, but sometimes you can take things too far, and there might be a danger of exaggeration. You really have to prove a point, or you might want to take something so far that you can't sort of row it back. And so, don't feel that you always have to be in the middle of things, and avoid doing anything that is remotely dangerous with a Sun square Mars, Sun semi-square Mars, because fundamentally it is a dangerous aspect. Though it's possible that this Sun semi-square Mars it more manifests itself in terms of what you say, and because there is this nervous agitation that some Leos are going to be feeling, and that nervous agitation could transfer into what you say, and you might say something which you think is harmless, but actually it's not, and it is because it is a reflection of your agitation, and that can be about psychological determinism. Sometimes we feel something, and it just expresses itself, and we just can't help it. So that could happen. I remember a long time ago I was living in South London, and someone sort of knocked on the door, and it was one of these Christian people, and I'm usually very sympathetic to people knocking on the door, in terms of pushing some religious angle. And I was very pleasant to this person, and this person she gave me a leaflet about some church she has that she wanted me to go to it, and I was I was talking to her and I was being very friendly and I was saying yes, I would consider it and I wouldn't, and I might sort of go to a church. So I was saying, well, and then she said to me, well, why are you screwing my leaflet into a ball? And I was doing, as I was talking to her, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was taking her leaflet and I was just kneading it into this tiny ball. And I just looked at myself. I didn't even know what I was doing. And so that is how sort of psychological determinism can work. At an unconscious level, I wanted this person to go away, and I did not want to talk about her church, but I was trying to be polite on the surface. So that can be how it works. So that's perhaps what you have to do. Be careful about what you're saying, because your words and your actions, can be a reflection of what you're feeling, and the two might be out of sync. And additionally, with Mars moving into Libra, that might say something about the people around you, the people you meet every day, neighbors, for example, and make sure that you and your neighbors are getting on well with one another. And if there's any potential for argument or a dispute, then sort it out. Make sure everyone explains everything. So, and don't jump to conclusions. So if your neighbor is doing something you don't approve of, don't necessarily just get yourself into an argument. Just try to be diplomatic and certainly be tolerant. And additionally, be careful when you're out sort of driving or traveling short distances, because it might seem simple, driving a few miles or even less than a mile. You think it's just a simple thing to do, but it may not be simple, particularly if you're annoyed about something. So you're annoyed about something, and it just manifests, and it just can manifest in terms of what you're doing with your car. And cars in general, over the next couple of days, do treat cars with respect, and don't get angry with your car. And if you own a car, and it's not necessarily just about cars. It could be about any form of short distance transport, the local bus, cycling, however you get around. That could be an area of difficulty for you. So that's another area where you need to be tolerant, you need to be open-minded, and you shouldn't take risks. Virgo. Mars is now out of your sign, for sure. Doesn't matter where you are. And so Mars moving out of Virgo does create new possibilities and new challenges. And Mars moving through Virgo, some people it's absolutely fine. I was reading the comments, and I was reading someone was saying how much they enjoyed Mars moving through Virgo, how it really worked for them, Mars moving into Virgo. And so for you, why would Mars in Virgo work? Because it's energizing. It gives you energy. It allows you to be yourself, and if you want to do something, you can do it. I mean, that might be one interpretation of it, even though Mars is conjunct with South Node. But Mars conjunct with South Node could also represent some comfort, because the South Node is about the past and being able to do things which worked in the past and realizing that they work in the present as well. But now that Mars is moving out of Virgo into Libra, there is a change of emphasis, and Mars stays in Libra until September the 22nd, and I think something like that. And so with Mars in Libra, it's possible that there is an increased focus on money, because it's Libra. Libra is the house, or the sign after Virgo, and there tends to be a sort of a financial dimension there. And so with Mars moving through Libra, it's possible that you have to put a lot of effort into money, making sure that the financial side of things is all in order. And where there's money, there's an argument, or where there's money, there could be an argument, and you have to adopt the right approach. And of course, Mars is about to make an opposition to Saturn, and you're probably starting to feel that Mars opposition Saturn already, and so it's across the financial axis of your chart. So if the issue of money comes up, then you just might find yourself getting annoyed and having to look after your own best interests, and it may not always be easy, and you have to be subtle. Just because something isn't going your way or you're annoyed about something doesn't mean that you immediately have to make a fuss about it. And while this is going on, we have the moon moving through Capricorn, and the moon moving through Capricorn is a lighter influence. The moon is still moving through Capricorn, and so with the moon moving through Capricorn, it's not just about money. It's also about what you can do, and making sure that you're able to do it well. And more than that, it's about you being able to do something that is a unique expression of who you are. And if you can be genuine and authentic, then this is going to be picked up on. You don't have to try to be someone else. Absolutely not. And at the moment you can meet interesting people, and you can come over as yourself being interesting. And perhaps that's where you need to put your energy at the moment. Trying to be different. No, you're not trying to be different for the sake of it, but just trying to be unique and understanding, what makes you different. And that is something at the moment that you very much can do. And so it's perhaps also about a transfer of energy. So Mars moving from Virgo into Libra, it's not just about Mars moving into a sign, Libra, which is associated with money in the Virgo chart. It's just about Mars changing sign, and Mars moving out of your sign. You perhaps no longer have to militantly push forward with your own interests, that you can perhaps be slightly more relaxed, and because you're feeling slightly more relaxed, perhaps slightly less defensive, that could make you an easier person to get on with, because Mars is no longer messing things up for you. And so if you can be tolerant and open-minded, and at the same time be authentically creative and authentically different, I think that that will very much be appreciated, and I think that it can get noticed, and people will very often like what they see. Libra, Mars is moving into your sign. It's obviously an important event, and Mars moving into Libra, it may say something about what your priorities are. And so with Mars moving into Libra, you could become quite assertive, more assertive than usual. Finally, you realize that you do have to look after your own interests, and that is okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And additionally, you may become aware of what might be undermining your interests, and you'll be perhaps looking around, seeing where the threats are, also perhaps considering the power balance. Libra as a sign, obviously it's ruled by the scales, and one thinks of balance and the balance of power. In every relationship, there is a power equation. In every relationship, one party is potentially stronger than another, and of course it may depend on different areas. So in a relationship, in certain areas, party A is going to be stronger. In other areas, party B is going to be stronger. So it kind of depends. But at the moment, that balance is something that you are very aware of. And the Mars, when it does move into Libra, it makes an opposition to Saturn and it makes an opposition to Neptune. And that opposition, Mars opposition Saturn, you're feeling it already. And you're probably very aware of who is holding you back, who is starting to restrict your freedom of action. And your first job is to understand what's going on. It's not about reacting immediately. If you just react straight away, well, it's not going to work. You might have the wrong approach. You might choose the wrong targets. So don't be in a rush to assert yourself, but at the same time, be aware of what or who might be holding you back. Because with Mars in Libra, you do have a chance to really, be assertive and make it clear what is acceptable, and that is perhaps something you should be working on over the next 6 weeks. To begin with, over the next couple of days, that Mars opposition Saturn could be a problem. It may just be difficult for you to apply yourself to get noticed, but that's just a temporary problem. Once Mars moves beyond that opposition of Saturn, you will have more opportunities for really being yourself and concentrating on the things that matter. But still, do think about everyone around you and think about the power balance. And it may be that some people are never going to be helpful, or at least they're not going to be helpful over the next 6 weeks. And so if they're not going to be helpful, if they're going to undermine you, then why would you want anything to do with them? But don't jump to conclusions. To begin with, you're just trying to work out what is going on. And one other thing, Libra, sometimes you can be too polite. I mean, not every Libran is too polite. But if you're just honest about who you are and what is important to you, and particularly if you're honest about your individuality, where you are an individual, your own particular interests, your own particular idiosyncrasies, if you're honest right from the beginning, then people understand you. And they understand what your limits are. They understand what you're capable of doing, and that means that things are straightforward right from the beginning. Now, if you keep your individuality to yourself, then people make assumptions. They assume that you are a particular kind of person. They assume that you're going to be able to put up with particular things, and they make assumptions. And then when they discover at a later stage who you really are, that's when the problems start to arise. So be straightforward and honest and open right from the beginning, and that will make things a lot easier for you. Scorpio. Mars is your ruler, and Mars is changing signs. I mean, in fact, it might have changed signs yesterday. So Mars is moving out of Virgo and into Libra. And, there are several ways of looking at this. Now, you could say that Mars is on the Aries point. Mars is opposition 0 degrees Aries. It's on 0 degrees Libra. And the sign just doesn't matter. It's just a power point. It's a point where you have an opportunity to really extend your reach. You can reach out as far as is possible, and it all depends who you are. Not all of us are world leaders. Some of us, most of us, we're just ordinary human beings, and there are limits to what we can do. But within those limits, Scorpio, do take it as far as you can. Extend that reach as far as you can. And I'm thinking about the social reach, so that as many people as possible know what you really think and what you believe in and what is important to you. Because, every Scorpio has a powerful set of beliefs. Some things really matter. Almost a matter of life and death. I mean, not quite a matter of life and death. And so that might be one manifestation of Mars moving into Libra. But I do have to say, Libra is a sign where Mars is in its detriment. I mean, Mars rules Aries, and that means that, in Libra, it's not so strong. And so it's possible with this sign change that you feel your energy going down just a bit. You're not quite as strong, not quite as powerful as you used to be. And it's not such a problem. I mean, Saturn is in Aries, so I know that doesn't sound great, but Saturn is in Aries, which is a sign ruled by Mars, and Mars is in Libra, which is the sign where Saturn is exalted. So there is a mixed mutual reception between Mars and Saturn. So because of that, that does give you a fair amount of strength. And so it may not actually be true that Mars is weakened when it moves into Libra. It's because of that opposition. It's because Saturn is in Aries. Although right now, when Mars moving into Libra, it does straight away start making an opposition to Saturn. And so Mars opposition Saturn, you're going to be aware of things that might be very frustrating, and things maybe that you just have to do. You don't want to do them, but you feel you have to do them. And so be aware of those obligations. And it is a pain, but if you want to do something and it's important to you, then it's probably best, Scorpio, that you don't announce it. It doesn't have to be articulated to a wider audience. Again, if it's something you have to do, just go and do it. And once you've done it, things are going to be a lot easier. And it doesn't take away from the fact that you definitely have a message, and the message could be ignored by some people. Not everyone is going to be on your wavelength. In fact, a lot of people are going to be, at the moment, is so stuck in their ways that it'll just be impossible to get through to them. And that shouldn't bother you, because that's the world you're living in, and there are enough people who will listen to you for it to be worth the effort. So, Scorpio, as you can see, it's not necessarily a particularly easy day. It could be frustrating, and you certainly don't want to do anything that is dangerous. I mean, remember, the Sun is making a semisquare to Mars. So the Sun making a semisquare to Mars, that could be annoying. That could be angry. Although it could be motivating as well. I mean, the Sun, don't forget, the Sun is in Leo. It's very strong in Leo. It's in an angular house, so it's possible that perhaps in terms of your work, I mean, I think that your work, if you are going into work today, it's not going to be easy. It could be quite frustrating. But if you can possibly bear to make an effort, regardless of the apparent resistance, you will make an impact. But and you may actually cover something quite important, and people are going to notice whatever happens. So it's more of the same. It's a difficult day, but it's a day when you can definitely get noticed, and it's worth trying to get noticed. Even if not everyone is going to be appreciative of your overall message. Sagittarius. Mars is changing sign. I mean, I'm telling everyone that Mars is changing sign, and it might seem rather boring, the fact that Mars is changing sign, but it does matter. It perhaps allows you to get a perspective. Yes, sometimes Sagittarius, you do lose perspective. Perhaps you put too much energy into one thing and you're not really fully thinking it through. And so now with Mars moving into Libra, things might just be ever so slightly easier. You can start to think about things in a new way. And Mars, when it moves into Libra, it does make a trine to Uranus, and it makes a trine to Pluto. Okay, those trines to Uranus and Pluto, they're not exact today, but they're still making an impact. And it's possible, Sagittarius, that you should be expanding your reach. Perhaps you have underestimated other people, or you've underestimated the social opportunities. So if you feel that you're not being appreciated, maybe you need to sort of chop and change. You move somewhere else, or you give something a go. You give other people a chance, and you maybe you say what's on your mind, and you see what kind of a response you get. And so the right kind of people can be very good for you. And this is something that perhaps you're thinking about ever since Uranus moved into Gemini, which was a month ago, beginning of July. Uranus moved into Gemini. And Uranus moving into Gemini does say something about other people, and in particular, one-to-one relationships. It does stir things up. Some people have real individuality, and the kind of individuality that can't be compromised, and perhaps that should be encouraging you to show the same kind of individuality. And Mars is now making that trine to Uranus, and so Mars trine Uranus might indicate that certain people can be really very interesting. And so do give people a chance over the next couple of days, even if you yourself have a few doubts about it. And there's no need to be totally accepting. You can give people feedback, and you can listen to what someone is saying, listen to what they're planning, and questioning the wisdom of things might be something you're going to be very good at today. So you hear that something is being planned, and everyone's ready to go, and then Sagittarius comes along and says, "Well, are you sure that's a good idea?" And you might think that no one's going to listen to you, but if you question things with sincerity, I think they will listen. And through your intervention, it's possible, Sagittarius, that you have a chance to prevent someone from making a mistake. And part of it is because you're going to be able to give advice, and, even if it's quite negative advice, but you're going to be able to give that advice in a sympathetic and caring way. And I think that people will listen to you, and they will accept that at some level you have a degree of wisdom. Capricorn. The big event today is, of course, Mars moving into Libra. And Mars moving into Libra for you is probably quite a good thing. And the reason is that you might think that Mars moving into Libra, that's about Mars moving into the sign of its detriment, because Mars is in its detriment in Libra. It rules Aries, it's in its detriment in Libra. But Mars in Libra is in the sign of Saturn's exaltation, and Saturn in Aries is in the sign of Mars's rulership. So there is a good relationship between Mars and Saturn, even though right now Mars is moving to an opposition of Saturn. Okay, the opposition of Saturn itself could be quite tense, could be quite challenging. Yeah, you are starting to feel that opposition to Saturn, but I don't want to dwell on it. I want to start off by considering, Mars moving into Libra, and we know what that means. Libra is, it's an important sign for you, Capricorn. It's an angular sign, and in your chart, Libra is, it's a sign that relates to ambition and what you want to achieve. And so Mars moving into Libra, I hope, is going to make you ambitious. This is a time when you can start to achieve things. And Mars stays in Libra for quite a time, I think until September the 22nd. And so over the next 6 weeks, Capricorn, there is a lot that you can do. There's a lot that you can put into action. So make sure that the next 6 weeks are busy. I'm not saying that it's always going to be easy. We do have Mars opposition Saturn coming up, and your first impulse as you start to experience Mars moving into Libra might be one of frustration. You're thinking that this is all just too much, you can't do it, and it's just annoying. But this frustration is not going to last so very long. It will dissipate, and things will start to get easier, and you'll be able to move into gear, and you'll be able to move forward with whatever it is that you want. So do think about your ambitions, and you have a chance to really get them off the ground over the next 6 weeks. So don't be shy, and don't hold back. Now, again, not everyone is going to like what you're doing. The Sun is making a semi-square to Mars. There's a Sun semi-square Mars today. It's quite an angry combination, and so there could be resistance. That resistance can take on many forms. That resistance might be resistance from other people, but it might be just your own resistance. You yourself, at some level, maybe don't want to succeed, and you're coming up with reasons why, it's all impossible, it's all a waste of time. But that is not the case. It is a great time for Capricorns. It can be a great time for Capricorns. I'm not saying it's always going to be a happy time for Capricorns, but very often, when we're being successful, when we're making progress, we're not necessarily happy. At best, there can be a grim satisfaction that we are slowly moving from A to B. It's a difficult process, but we will get there in the end. And that sort of goes back to the image, your image, the goat, the mountain goat, slowly getting there, even if it's very steep. Even if you have all those YouTube videos of goats climbing up dams. I don't quite know how they do it, but these sheer dams, concrete dams, and these goats somehow find a way of getting to the top. I've no idea how they do it, but that is certainly a good imagery if you're a Capricorn. And as far as today is concerned, Moon is still moving through Capricorn for most of the day, probably perhaps all of the day. Okay, if you're in the Americas, this evening the Moon will move out of Capricorn, but while Moon is moving through Capricorn, you can make good progress, and you can make good progress where there isn't so much opposition, and if you just keep going, you'll feel that you're reaching the finishing line. But of course, once you've reached the finishing line, you'll realise that there is a whole new race that you have to get going on. But let's not worry about that right now. Aquarius, I have been sort of going on about this week, particularly the last half of the week, and I've been saying that it is difficult. We have Mars opposition Saturn coming up, got full moon in a day or two. What else we've got? Today got Sun semisquare Mars, got Mars moving into Libra, and I have been negative. But what kind of impact does this have on you? It may well be that this isn't so bad. That you can almost take advantage of what might be a difficult situation. You might even relish it. I mean, at least it's interesting, and it's invigorating. It gives you a new view, and at the moment also, Aquarius, we can be negative. We can talk about Mars opposition Saturn, but we can also talk about grand trines, and there is a grand trine coming up, involving Mars, Pluto and Uranus. Now, that grand trine is not exact today, but it's going to be exact very soon. And so, what has happened, Aquarius, is that Mars has moved into Libra, and in Libra, it's making trines to Uranus and Pluto. So you've got an airy grand trine, and of course Pluto is in Aquarius, and so this grand trine is invigorating, and it also allows you to get in touch with something that you have perhaps been trying to get in touch with for some time, but it hasn't always been easy. And so Mars trine Pluto and Uranus gives you an opportunity to see things in a new way, and that's also connected with the fact that Mars is out of Virgo and it's into Libra. Mars is now in an air sign. Where are you putting your efforts and energies? You're increasingly able to put your energies into finding something which just goes beyond the everyday, and also goes beyond the introspectiveness of your own emotions. With Mars moving through Virgo for the last almost couple of months. I don't know how long it's been going. I think it's a couple of months it's been in Virgo. And there are times when that could have been quite introspective, where you were really thinking about yourself and your own problems and your priorities, and it was all about you. And now with Mars moving into Libra, you can be more expansive, and you're able to get in touch with something which just goes above and beyond everyday existence. Hence Mars making trines to Pluto and trines to Uranus, and now also you're making sense of Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto has been in Aquarius for some time. It went into Aquarius the end of last year, but it's a difficult energy. But now you're starting to get used to it, and you're starting to be able to see. You're starting to see the opportunities, and additionally, don't allow yourself to be pressurized. Mars is making an opposition to Saturn. That's one thing I have to say. So, Saturn is your ruler. Mars is making that opposition. And so that Mars opposition Saturn could be about an idea or a person bearing an idea which at first you're not too happy with. You might resist what you're being told, resist what you're hearing, but it's not a time for resistance in terms of ideas. Every idea has a possibility. You don't necessarily have to take an idea in its raw form. You can change it. You can integrate it into who you are. But it's all about moving forward. So to my mind, that does all look very positive. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, the Sun is making a semi-square to Mars, and the Sun is in Leo. It's in your opposite sign, And Sun in Leo can represent another person who is quite strong, and they're semi-square Mars, so they could be angry or they could be stubborn. They want things done their way, and this might indicate that some people could be problematic. And relationships today, maybe not just today, over the next couple of days, should be treated carefully. And some people might be just too much of a good thing, and they might want a lot of attention. They might, demand attention, and if they don't get attention, they could just get annoyed. They could be disruptive, and that's not something you want to happen. So when dealing with other people on a one-to-one level, tread very carefully, and it might be best if you avoid getting too close to any one other person. Pisces. There is a lot going on, as we know, at the moment, and today we've got Mars moving into Libra. We've got the Sun making a semi-square to Mars, and that Mars moving into Libra, as far as how it affects you, it's not so much that Mars is moving into Libra, it's the fact that Mars is moving out of Virgo, and that's something that to say something about relationships. Virgo is your opposite sign, and so with Mars moving through Virgo, there were times when other people could have been playing up. They could have been trying to get your attention, even demanding your attention, and that might not have been what you really wanted or even what you needed. And now that Mars is moving out of Virgo and into Libra, that might just mean that some of the pressure is starting to relent. You don't have to worry so much about what other people are doing, what they're saying, and you can make your own choices. And perhaps in the recent past there were people to worry about, but now, it's all calming down. And the moon is void, of course. The moon has made its last aspect before leaving Capricorn, and so with moon void, of course, there isn't so much going on, and there isn't so much going on from a social viewpoint. So don't feel obliged. And the moon will, of course, eventually move into Aquarius. In fact, the moon moves into Aquarius if you're in the Americas this evening, and with the moon moving into Aquarius, things can start to sort of calm down in quite a big way. That doesn't mean that things are going to be boring. I mean, things are going to be more interesting when the moon moves into Aquarius. There's going to be plenty of things to grab your attention, but you don't have to take it to heart. You don't have to really sort of become part of it all. And so if you have become sort of exhausted, it's all become too much, and you're watching this astrological theatre unfold, and there are big things going on at the moment, but these big things going on right now, I don't think they affect you personally, and so you perhaps do have a chance to be an observer. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to look at the I Ching. So this is my I Ching reading. So I ask the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 59, which is dispersion. Now, when I did the I Ching reading for yesterday, Wednesday, dispersion was the second hexagram. So dispersion does seem to be a theme at the moment. And dispersion is connected with rains. The rains are coming. And actually, it's raining today where I am in Washington State. It hasn't rained for ages, but it's here. The ground is wet, and there was overnight rain. I think it's actually raining now. But dispersion is about clearing things out. you could see dispersion as being like a power washer. Things have collected, people have got complacent, and nothing's moving, and then dispersion comes along and everything gets swept away. And we get swept away in it all, and that might sound rather distressing. We don't want to get swept away, but this is a storm that is not necessarily a bad thing. It can move things on, and it can be about progress. And it's also important, though, if we're in a storm, that we maintain our calm and our presence of mind. We mustn't just assume that everything is going to be fine, that the storm will pass, because it won't. And we have to know what to do. And there are three moving lines here. The bottom line moves, and the bottom line does indicate that things are chaotic. As a storm comes, it may be difficult to know what to do, difficult to know what the right course of action is, and we might get lost in the storm. We might find that we just cannot move. But what the I Ching tells us is that to get through the storm, we need to certainly be very focused, and we have to have a good awareness of the dangers. And additionally, it says we need a strong horse. I don't know about riding, but a strong horse that knows what to do, that knows in which direction to move. And that strong horse may represent sort of our higher self, because it does indicate that, though, when talking about a strong horse, there's a sort of animal instinct here that sometimes animals perhaps have an instinct for how to escape. They see the problem, let's get out, and you have no choice. You have to follow the animal. And so the strong horse may represent your own animal instincts. They might also, your survival instincts, but they could also represent your higher self, something that cuts in and says, you have got to do this. Although, it could be other people, people who can lead you out. But there is a way out, and it's just very important that you take action immediately. And in a social sense, there's a possibility that differences of opinion are starting to manifest, and they're only just starting to manifest. So be aware of them, be ready to act before things get out of hand. And again, the second line moves, and it's a similar message. We can see that things are not entirely right, and we need to take action. But the storm may help us, because when we've got a storm, things do move forward, and we can be swept up by the storm and taken beyond the crisis. And so it's not so bad, this storm. I mean, there is a way through it. There's plenty of help. And then the top line moves, and so the top line in this case is, we need to do what is right. And, it could be a situation where we need to think about other people as well. It may be that we're talking about some kind of storm that does, of course, when I'm talking about storm, I'm almost certainly talking about a metaphorical storm, not a real storm. But sometimes we have to make sure that people we know, our family, our friends, that they're all okay, that are able to get out of this storm. And so we need to think about not just ourselves, but we need to think about other people as well. And it seems that if that we can do the right thing, and however terrifying it seems, and there may be moments of terror, there may be moments where it just does not feel that things are going well, but we will get through. And that takes us to the second hexagram. And the second hexagram is hexagram number 3, which is difficulty at the beginning. And it's kind of weird that you've got difficulty at the beginning as a second hexagram when it's a second state, difficulty at the beginning. And this is perhaps just giving us more information. We're in a situation where things are not easy. The storm has done its done its bit. It's caused chaos, and it's left us in a new situation. It's a new situation that still isn't great, and there are still problems to work out, but there is almost a promise here that things are going to get better. Just because there are difficulties at the beginning, whatever project we're involved with doesn't mean there are going to be difficulties at the end. And so we shouldn't be put off by early problems, because it does seem that there is a way of resolving them. And now I want to look at some of the events going on, astrologically today. And one thing we've got today is we have got Mars moving into Libra. So here's the moment that Mars moves into Libra. So here it is. So I make it that it went into Libra, early today, London time, 12:23 a.m. And so, there is Mars at 0 degrees Libra. And, I think that Mars moving into Libra, it is a big change. It's particularly because Mars is at a cardinal point. The cardinal points are sort of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So, it's opposition the Aries point, and it is a point of great power. The Mars Aries point. The Aries point, in Uranian astrology is the world, and so when you've got Mars opposition the Aries point, then the world is perhaps quite violent. That's what the world is like. Now Vitta in his rules for planetary pictures, he talks about Aries Mars. He doesn't say a great deal about it. He simply says labor, the forces of nature, injuries. I mean, that's a bit too brief for my liking. Forces of nature. I'm not saying it's going to be a tsunami or an earthquake, but I think he should have perhaps said more about Mars in Aries. It's about conflict and potential for conflict. Now Mars is going to be on the Aries point quite regularly, but we already know that there's conflict in the world. Okay, you could say there's always conflict in the world, but we know what's happening in Gaza. We know what's happening in Ukraine. And we know that there's been a recent conflict between Israel and Iran. So there's plenty of places that there can be conflict, and there are places that aren't in the news. So that might be a feature of Mars in Libra. Now, Mars in Libra could be about, you think about Mars moving into Libra, Libra being about peace, supposedly, and compromise. That's one way of looking at it. And so you might say Mars in Libra, there are some people who are putting a lot of effort into creating peace. You think about Trump's envoy, what's his name, Witkoff, going to Moscow to supposedly try to persuade the Russians to have a ceasefire with Mars in Libra. That's a nice try. But Mars is opposition Saturn, so you can't just see Mars in Libra on its own. You have to say, well, it's opposition Saturn. That is going to be quite frustrating. So that's Mars in Libra. We can look at an astromap to see where on Earth this Mars in Libra might have maximum impact. Just remember, astrocartography can be very hit and miss. So here's an astromap, and you can see this big red line here. That's a big vertical line. So these are all the sort of places where you've got Mars on the IC, and also you're going to have Saturn and Neptune on the midheaven. So you can see that this goes through eastern Saudi Arabia, and it looks like is that Dubai, and then it goes up through Tehran, and so through into Russia. So you might think about Dubai and Tehran, for example, as places that might be impacted, by this. Additionally, Mars is conjunct the ascendant. Mars in Libra is a conjunct the ascendant in Tasmania. I don't know what happens in Tasmania, but I thought I'd point that. I also eastern Japan, relatively close to Tokyo, but that looks more like Hokkaido rather than the southern islands in Tokyo. So let's just look at this astro map. Sort of look at Mars and Libra and relocate it to different places. So if we relocate it to Tehran, then we have Mars quite close to the IC. I mean, not exactly there. I mean, Saturn's on the midheaven, but again, it's not exactly there. Jupiter's on the ascendant, but still, Iran might be somewhere that we might want to be looking at, and another place to relocate it might be Dubai. Dubai is, of course, in a quite sort of strategic place, and so Dubai. Now, Dubai is interesting here. So if we set this chart for Dubai. Mars pretty close to the IC, Saturn on the midheaven, Neptune on the midheaven. Now, could that say something about the Gulf and oil? Because Dubai is right on that sort of important sort of stretch of water. Is that on the Gulf? So that might be a country or an area that we should be looking at perhaps over the next week. And I did notice something in Japan, so let's just quickly, I'll set that for Sapporo, which I think is the largest city in Hokkaido. So not exact, but Saturn is quite close. There's that Mars-Saturn opposition set for Sapporo, so you might that might be an area to look out for. I don't know what happens in Japan. One thinks of tsunamis and other issues, but it could be some human event. And finally, I mentioned Tasmania, so if we set that for, say, Hobart, Mars, not exactly on the ascendant though, not that good. So there are a few areas that we might want to think about. I think the Persian Gulf, Tehran, Dubai would be an area that we probably should be thinking about. Now, Mars goes into Libra pretty much at the same time as the Sun gets to exactly 15 degrees Leo. So here is the moment where the Sun is at 15 degrees Leo, exactly 135 degrees from the Aries point. So this is measured on the ecliptic, is the halfway point between the solstice and the equinox. And so it happens on August the 7th, 2025. So we could see this as an astrological cross-quarter day, if you're into the Celtic view. I mean, of course, there is a Celtic festival around now, but it's not exactly on when the sun moves into 15 degrees Leo, but it's relatively close. And so as an astrological cross-quarter day, it might matter. And the thing is that when the Sun is at 15 degrees Leo, it is also at exactly the same time as the Mars is at 10 degrees, at 0 degrees Libra, or 0 degrees 10 minutes Libra. So we've got this Sun-Mars semisquare, and I just regard this Sun-Mars semisquare as, in general, being quite dramatic. And it's you've got these two planets, these two very fiery planets in semisquare with one another, and that might represent drama on a global level. And so people are going to get annoyed with each other. We already know that there are problems in the Middle East, that there are problems in Ukraine, and so the Sun square Mars might really sort of blow things up, and it's just not easy, and it's more evidence that this looks to me astrologically at least like being a tense week. I mean, I did look at the astrocartography and of it, so if we set this, if we look at this, if we look at areas which might be impacted by it, I noticed that Mars is going to be, when you have that exact, when you have the Sun at exactly 15 degrees Libra, 15 degrees Leo, so Mars is going to be on the ascendant, going through the Caucasus. So the Caucasus might be a place to look a place to look at. It's also relatively close to Tehran. So Caucasus is of course a sort of right on Russia's border. A lot of people are focusing on the Caucasus. Of course, America, the United States, and NATO, they're trying to get at Russia via the Caucasus. The EU is trying to have as much influence as possible in Armenia and Georgia, and of course Azerbaijan is playing its own games with Turkey. So the Caucasus is a complicated place, and it's all part of this sort of great power rivalry going on at the moment. And so maybe the Sun semisquare Mars could have an impact on the Caucasus. So that's just an idea. And so finally, just a couple of people that might be influenced by all these goings on. Mars moving into Aries, Mars moving into Libra, there being a Sun-Mars semisquare. So Russia is certainly in the news, and Russian negotiations and people trying to get Russia to agree to a ceasefire. And Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, was born on March the 21st, 1950. So he was born at the time of the Northern Hemisphere spring equinox, and he has a Sun-Mars opposition in his chart. Now, we don't know whether Sergei Lavrov has his Sun in Pisces or in Aries. We don't know, because we don't know what time he was born. But I think that Sergei Lavrov, and in fact, if you look at Sergei Lavrov's chart, he's got Sun opposition Mars, and he's got Uranus on the T, and so with Mars moving into Libra, he's coming up for his Mars return, and we've got the Sun at Sun at 15 degrees Leo. That means it's making a sesquiquadrate to his Mars, and we've got Saturn and Neptune doing stuff. So Sergei Lavrov could be facing a few difficulties. Now, it's a stressful time for him. It's always a stressful time. He is got a lot of work to do, being Russia's foreign minister. He's generally regarded as being very effective. As a foreign minister, he is streaks ahead of anyone in the West in terms of his knowledge and sort of expertise. But he's getting on. He's just turned 75, so that's quite a lot of work for a 75-year-old to be doing. Being Russia's chief diplomat, and with Mars and Uranus, you've got to think about his own safety. Okay, he could have accidents, but I would guess that there are people who are trying to kill him. I'm sure I think it very likely if the Ukrainians had a chance, they would do something. So Sergei Lavrov possibly has to be careful, over the next week, while the Sun and Mars are hitting and not to mention Saturn and Neptune are hitting that hitting his T square. And so he mustn't overdo it. So it's not, he doesn't just need good security. He needs to make sure he doesn't overdo it, because he could push himself too far. And turning to America, someone who is on YouTube a lot, the Young Turks. I don't know whether you've come across him. Cenk Uygur. The Young Turks, it's a sort of left-wing YouTube channel, but they're very sort of critical of the Democrats as well as the Republicans. And Cenk Uygur is born on the same day as Sergei Lavrov. He was born 20 years, 1970. He was born exactly 20 years after Sergei Lavrov, and he has his son, again, like Sergei Lavrov. I can't be sure that Cenk Uygur has his son in Aries. If he was born right at the beginning of the day, his son would be in Pisces. But he is going to have Mars opposition his sun, and he is going to have the sun sesquiquadrate his sun. I mean, his overall image, he likes to give the impression of being someone who is forceful, who gets angry, who's raging against the political system. And so Mars, the sun and Mars hitting his natal sun, might really stir him up. And talking about people on YouTube, there is Candace Owens. So Candace Owens, she's currently involved with a legal spat involving Macron and his wife, because she was claiming, I believe, that Brigitte Macron was actually a man, and she's really doubled down on her claim. And she has her Mars at 0 degrees 18 minutes Cancer. Okay, if she was born right at the beginning of the day, it's possible maybe that her Mars would be in very late Gemini, but I think it's likely her Mars is in Cancer. So she's got Mars square her Mars, and she's got the Sun semi-square her Mars. So her Mars super activated, and so that fits someone who is involved in a legal tussle, who's getting a huge amount of media attention. Although Mars is a male planet, that might say something about, for example, her marriage or her relationship with other people in general. I mean, she strikes me as someone who could be quite a difficult person to deal with. I mean, she clearly has views on most things, and moving to the UK and finishing with the UK, there are two Britons I want to look at, and the first one is Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch is the leader of the British Conservative Party, and she's under constant pressure. I mean, she's been leader of the Conservative Party for less than a year, and everyone is writing her off. She's saying she's completely useless. I mean, from her chart, I mean, I'm not in the UK, and I have to take what people say at face value. Everyone says that she's useless, that she's just never going to get anywhere, and that it's only a matter of time before she has to step down. That she's not effective in Prime Minister's question time, and so forth. But still, astrologically, I'm just not 100% convinced about that. I think that her chart, it does fit very well with the UK chart, and I just feel that astrologically I don't feel that one should necessarily write her off. But I have to take what people say. I have to say, there are people who know far more about what's going on in British politics, and people seem to be very certain that she's done for. So I just have to accept their view. But she does have her Mercury at 0 degrees Capricorn. Her Mercury might be in late Sagittarius, but Saturn is moving towards a square of her Mercury, and yes, Mars has been square her Mercury. Sun is sesquiquadrate her Mercury, so her Mercury is getting hit, and that may say something about what she's feeling, what she's thinking, what she's saying, and I think that the events at the moment, they are putting her under an increasing amount of pressure. And of course, later in the year, Saturn is going to go retrograde back into Pisces, so she'll have her Saturn opposition Saturn coming up soon enough, and so I'll be looking at her chart at a later stage. But I mean, it's difficult with Kemi Badenoch because I don't have a time of birth, but don't feel I'm not entirely convinced that things are quite as bad for her as people are claiming. But again, you have to go with what the commentators are saying. And finally, Prince William. Prince William, he had his birthday June the 21st. So Prince William is a Cancerian, just. His sun is at 0 degrees 6 minutes Cancer. If he'd been born a couple of hours earlier, he'd be a Gemini, but he's not. He's a Cancer. And so what this means is that Mars is making a square to his sun, and also the sun is making a semi-square to his sun. So the sun is very much who he is. And I don't know what's going on in Prince William's life. I don't know what the health of his father is like. We just don't know. I mean, the sun isn't just him. The sun, you could argue, is his father as well, as a representative of his father. It's a sort of male planet, and the sun can be the father. His sun is opposition true black moon Lilith. But, this... this aspect, well, it's not just Mars. It's not just Mars. It's not just the fact that he's got Mars square his sun. He has got Saturn. He's got Saturn square his sun. He's got Neptune square his sun. It's all hitting him, and Sun semi-square his sun. So he potentially is under quite a lot of pressure, and of course it might say something about his wife, it may say something about the country, or of course it may say something about his dispute with his brother. Apparently him and his brother, it's really bad, and so these aspects to his sun could just be making the situation a whole lot worse. And additionally, with Prince William, Mars is going into Libra, so that means that soon enough he's going to have a Mars return, and then he's going to have Mars conjunct his Saturn. He's going to have Mars on his Mars-Saturn midpoint. So, Prince William, we should be looking at Prince William and looking at his behaviour, and there may be a lot of things that Prince William might be pretty angry about. So those are my thoughts on today, on Mars moving into Libra, the Sun semi-square Mars, the fact that it is the astrological cross quarter day, and it's where we are halfway between the solstice and the equinox. So things are starting to really happen, and later on in the week we've got Mars opposition Saturn. We've got the full moon. So we're really in the thick of things at the moment, aren't we? So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.